Under the government's reopening roadmap, this new plan, there's going to be a phased return to offices and other workplaces getting underway from next Monday. Thousands of people, of course, naturally have been working from home at the kitchen table in the box room since March of last year, meaning that they could, in many cases, I'm sure many of you are facing the prospect of returning to the office for the very first time this coming Monday in 18 months. Caroline Reidy is from the HR suite and she's with us here on Lunchtime Live today. Caroline, we have had a huge amount of messages in from people about this over the past couple of days. What's your top line message, I suppose, first of all, though?
I think it's really important that we kind of make sure we do lots of consultation and engagement with people, because for a lot of people, they've got used to a different way of working now, which has become their normal way of working, whether that's at home, whether that's 2 days in or 3 days out, etc. And for a lot of people, the thought that they're going to be expected to go back initially in a phased return from the 20th of September and from the 22nd to be going back full time. We've a lot of people very concerned in relation to what does that mean for them.
OK, so first of all, let's start with the employees, because I've a lot of people getting in touch with us, Caroline, since we mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show. If you're being asked to come back 5 days a week from next Monday and it doesn't suit based on childcare arrangements, where does that leave you?
Ultimately, your place of work is whatever is outlined in your contract of employment. So if, Andrea, it says, yours is X location, then you're obliged to go back there. However, from a realistic perspective, the importance of engaging with that person to say, okay, you don't have childcare, what does that look like? Is it you haven't had enough time to prepare? Do you need longer? How can we facilitate it? Because I think if the employer just says you must return, for many that will mean that they're going to be dusting off their CV and looking for a job that's going to give them better flexibility.
Alan in Navan is wondering, Caroline, he says, with workers who are vaccinated and unvaccinated able to catch and spread the virus, what's the difference, if any, between the two groups? And can I ask to sit away from a staff member who isn't vaccinated?
So the answer is we don't know who is going to be vaccinated and unvaccinated. Ultimately, we as employers will have a sense, because most employers have given time off to people to go and get vaccinated, but we're legally not allowed to ask. And the Data Protection Commissioner has been very strict in her advice in relation to ensuring that we don't ask in general circumstances unless there is an exceptional reason. So in the example that that listener has given there, just needing to know so you know isn't a good enough reason. So what instead we as employers are doing, and we're advising people, is to make sure that we do lots of reassurance by doing a really good risk assessment, ensuring we have as much physical distancing as possible, looking at the hand hygiene, looking at using the masks, and also engaging lots with the lead worker rep, who is the kind of staff representative appointed to kind of engage with the employer to flag any concerns, so that if people feel, for example, look, the canteen, there's too many people congregating at the same time, how can we maybe stagger that? Or do we set up additional canteen stations, for example? So trying to think of ways around any concerns that are being flagged.
53106, if you have a question here for Caroline Reidy from the HR suite. So the employer can't ask you if you were vaccinated. You as an employee can't ask to sit beside people who are vaccinated, because the employer can't ask in the first instance. And whatever it says in your contract as your place of work, Caroline, that is, you can be mandated to come back in for the 5 days.
Absolutely. But like we all know at the minute, it's so difficult to get amazing staff, and it's so important to retain the good ones that you have. So it would be, I suppose, I would feel a very unwise move to just put a blanket ban on everybody not requesting the right to remote working, for example, when we know there's a code of practice being devised as we speak, which will be coming in Q4 of this year. Okay. So I would encourage people to start developing their policies now and starting to look at those requests.
Paula in Kilkenny, Caroline, is wondering, she says, do employers have to contact you to agree with you a return to the office? I've been working from home since January of 2021 to date, but I haven't been asked to return to the office just yet. I'd like 3 days at home and 2 in the office. I'm not sure if I should make contact with my employer and request this possibility.
I think she's very pragmatic in thinking about what does she want, what does she need, and the sooner she starts the engagement process, the better chance she has of being able to plan around it for herself. Most employers are following the government guidelines, so they're going with the 20th of September for the phased return, and then the 22nd of October, in line with public health advice. It hopefully will obviously go according to plan, but after that then there'll be no requirement of return of actually facilitating remote working, other than it being the right thing to do and to retain staff, etc. So for her, the sooner she starts that engagement. So, for example, if her employer says, well, look, we can't give you the 3 at home and the 2 in the office, but actually do 3 in the office and 2 at home, she'd be able to plan around that.
Okay. Here's an interesting text, Caroline. This listener on 53106 says, I'm returning to the office next week. My employer is going to allow hot desking, where we share the desks over the shift period. They don't pay sick leave. I'm really worried that I'll be expected to share a desk with somebody who hasn't isolated themselves with symptoms due to the lack of sick pay. I intend to arrive early for my shift so I can sanitise the workspace before starting. Why hasn't the government prioritised sick pay in the last 18 months?
So 2 things about sick pay. One is there is COVID sick pay in place, so that's there already. So if somebody has to self-isolate, or if somebody has symptoms of COVID, or indeed if somebody has been diagnosed with COVID, there is the sick pay scheme in place for those people. So that's a really important one to make sure that everybody knows that's there. And the second thing is there is statutory sick pay coming in effective from January of 2022. We're waiting for the legislation to be drafted to effect that, but we know that's coming, so that is prioritised. And COVID, again, I suppose, put a spotlight on the 2 topics your listener has raised there, one being the remote working and the second being that whole sick pay piece. So really important to note in relation to both of those.